Tonight, we are going to hear from three of our board members, and we're going to be discussing the mission, vision, and values of Latter-day Saint Earth Stewardship. LDSES has been around for 10 years, and so this past year, we've been working on kind of revising our mission, vision, and values and getting focused. So we wanted to share our renewed focus with you. Tonight, we will be hearing from Phil Fernberg, who is here. Phil, you want to wave? He is the chair of our board of directors. We will also be hearing from Peter Ashcroft. Peter, if you want to wave. He is our secretary, and Teresa Gomez, who is our vice chair of outreach. So you may have noticed a few changes around LDS Earth Stewardship, like our logo, which is slowly but surely permeating all our communications. And so we just kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit tonight. And we want to hear from y'all at the end about your suggestions and ideas and questions. So with that being said, I am going to hand the metaphorical mic over to Peter, who's going to start us off.
Great. Yeah, no, sorry about that. I had to shut my dog out because he was raising a ruckus. I want to say a little bit about the history of the organization. If you can't hear me, I've had some mic trouble, so let me know and I'll speak more loudly. I don't want to belabor this because the important thing is where we are today, but I think it's useful to sort of have a sense of where we've come from. And as Chloe said, the organization started 10 years ago, but I would argue that the starting date of the organization is a little bit ill-defined. Originally, it was just a bunch of people who, back in the old days, there were things called email list servers, and there were people who exchanged email, and that was the extent of it. But it grew organically at some point. About 10 years ago, actually formally became a nonprofit. And I think that the mission of the organization has evolved as well in a very good way. And I'd like to tell you what I think that evolution is. And just in a kind of a personal way, I think it reflects my own personal shift in mentality. So in that sense, maybe I'm not a reliable narrator because my own perspective has shifted. But my sense is this: when we first got together, they were mostly environmentalists who thought, well, Mormon environmentalists can fill a niche and be maybe politically useful. Maybe we can get some things done carrying the Mormon flag that are hard to get done otherwise. In retrospect, I think that was an understandable goal, but it was very kind of limited and it didn't have a full vision. I think there was an appreciation that ultimately what happens in a society depends on the values of the society, and that you can fight legal battles and make economic arguments and all that, but at the end of the day, the values of the society are determinative, and that's what will decide where things end up. So I think there was an appreciation that trying to affect the values of a society, whether it's an LDS society or people in our state or community, whatever, that's really where the most useful work could have been done. And in order to do that, we drew heavily on LDS doctrine, scriptures, and such, in order to make the case that stewardship for the earth was an important thing. But the important evolution that's happened is that rather than seeing LDS doctrine as a support for outcomes that we want, we see the value of the LDS doctrine, period, full stop. As a spiritual endeavor, Earth Stewardship is a spiritual endeavor, and that is the centerpiece of the organization as it stands today. And along the way, people who have those values and are has had those values is the best way to say it. Incidentally, they will do things that are probably good stewardship in their communities, and that's wonderful. But the focus of the organization has shifted from some type of material outcome that we might have wanted to a spiritual outcome. And we have faith that if we pursue the spiritual outcome, the material parts will fall in line. So that's really that's my personal perspective. I think the organization has evolved that way. So it's hard to have well-defined milestones in the last 10 years, but I think that one of them that stands out was when we had the fall forum with Sister Sharon Eubank speaking. because we had always wanted to be on good terms with the church. We wanted to be accepted. We didn't want to be perceived as critics, but it wasn't clear how we were being perceived. And when Sister Eubank spoke at one of our events as a general authority on the Relief Society board, that was an affirmation that we were doing something right. And additionally, the substance of what she said was great too. But even if she hadn't said a word, just being there was sort of a recognition that we were being perceived in the way we wanted to be perceived as supporters of the gospel, supporters of the church, who are attentive to the stewardship aspect of the gospel that maybe could use a little bit of a spotlight. So that was I'd say that was the single milestone that's most notable over the last 10 years, and now here we are with. We've got local groups formed and more forming, and we're trying to flesh out what that means in practice and how the main organization best supports them. And we have all those challenges that go with that growth. But anyway, I think we've come a long way, and we are in a very good place now. So that's my spiel. If you have any specific questions, I'll answer them, but that's all I got to say otherwise.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, Peter has been around since the beginning, so he's got a lot of good insights. Teresa, were you next, or was it Phil? I can't remember.
Phil's next.
Phil. Okay, here you go, Phil.
Great. Well, thanks for giving that background there, Peter. I really love that. And there's some things that you said there that we've talked about this quite a bit just as a board, but some things that you mentioned there that I had never heard before, and then I thought were just really fitting for what we've been doing lately. And so as Chloe mentioned, we for people who have been familiar with LDSVS for a good while now, if you look on the website and any of our documentation that's talking about our mission, vision, and values, you'll probably see familiar things, because we are trying to keep true to the roots and the heritage of the organization. But really what we wanted to do was do a refresh of these statements, mostly to just be more clear and perhaps more pointed about what it is exactly we're trying to do. And so I really love what Peter was saying, because I feel that actually brought us really well to the little tweaks that we've made in our mission statement, which is the one that I'm going to kind of talk about. And so the professed statement itself is that we're here to honor God by learning and living Latter-day Saint principles of creation care. And there's that little qualifier after that kind of tries to get specific about the ways that we're doing that. So as Peter mentioned, we're convening diverse groups of people from all faith backgrounds, by the way, and not just Latter-day Saints, but of all stripes. And we are doing that all over the world at this point, and our local chapters are growing in number, and the events and the sorts of initiatives they're involved in are growing. And then we provide faith-enriching environmental education resources, and that takes the form of a variety of things. So we have In the Company of Stewards, which is the thing that we're all here at, and I think many of us are regulars at. And this is a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to learn from individuals who are really doing this wherever they are at and in their own circumstances. Because the main thing that we wanted to get across is kind of what Peter was saying, is that this is really more about going down to the core of an individual, of a family, of a neighborhood, a community, a congregation, of how they themselves put their faith and works, as it were, together in pertaining to Earth stewardship. So it's that conjunction part of the mission statement that's so important for me. We're learning and living, and there's oscillations between the two. There's thought leadership being fed to us through anything from blog posts to In the Company of Stewards to our fall forum to creating curriculum around FHE lessons, around discussion of talks and what our leaders have even said in recent months about ways we should better care for the earth. And just being able to convene together and have conversations about it, and then also being able to put those things into action. We've had so many amazing stories that we've heard about people getting their hands dirty, literally, as they're, restoring mangroves in the Philippines, helping rewild the landscapes of Scotland and the UK, restoring native gardens in important cultural landscapes back in the eastern United States. People who are trying to hop on into what we can do to get more water to the Great Salt Lake right now in Utah. And then there's things as simple as people are taking nature walks together and just talking about what the scriptures tell them about their divine relationship with our Creator and our responsibility to care for creation. And there's book groups, things that are simple, and even just talking about just things as straightforward as how you get to work every day as a way that you can be a steward, right? So what I see here is just a more succinct and clear way of putting forward what it is exactly we are trying to accomplish as an organization, and that those things are quite action oriented, whereas before it was a little more abstract. And so that's what we're trying to project here in this statement. And I've just been amazed to see how much of that has been reflected in just the past year that I've been chair of the board and been hearing about what's happening in local chapters. I see some Salt Lake City chapter people here that I've been just love hearing the news about what you're doing. I've talked with folks that are out in Germany doing amazing things out there. It's great, and I feel that this mission is in full force and the wind is at our backs, as has been stated by Peter before. And so, yeah, I'm feeling very good about where we're at, and hopefully that just gives a little more context to some of the fairly slight, but I think needed adjustments to mission statements.
Great. And I mean, I'm Teresa. I joined LDS around the same time as Phil early last year. And as Phil and Peter have been saying, I feel pretty good about the direction where we're going. And I think 10 years ago, or maybe a little bit like longer than 10 years ago, they're having a lot of members of the church that have this vision, right? Like all the Mormon environmentalists probably have a vision similar to what we're stating, right? Like we imagine a world where every Latter-day Saint is meaningfully engaged in honoring and caring for God's gift of creation. That's the world that we will love, probably everyone in this call will love to see, right? A world where everyone that we know that's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints understands that it's our divine duty to take care of the earth. And a lot of what we do is to help members of the church make that connection, because we believe in the restoration, right? This is the restored gospel. And we believe that part of that restoration is the restoring of the earth. So as we work on receiving new revelation about all the things that are happening on the earth right now, and we listen to the prophets, we believe taking care of the earth and restoring what we have done, the damage that has been done to the earth, that's part of our vision too, restoring the earth. And I mean, it's really nice to have this like organization where we have been able to get together people that are like-minded. But the best part for me, at least, has been seeing how this can work and how fast things can grow. Later in the presentation, we'll talk about all the local chapters that we have. And I'm a map maker. Everything I do has to do with location, right? And I wish I had time to like map all the little dots of where local chapters are. But if you're familiar with the organization, last year we were running this campaign called Y Talk, where BOU students were promoting climate conversations, right? They were talking about climate with their friends at school, but also with their families. And because we all love maps, we were recording those conversations and kind of like registering where they were happening, right? So that was a campaign that we started last semester. We started with like 10 conversations, or maybe, I think at our first meeting, we had like 40 students. So we started with like 40 conversations in September of last year. Right now, we're at 70,000 conversations, and those conversations are all over the world. So when we talk about having a vision where every Latter-day Saint is kind of like green-minded, those stories, like the White Talk story, gives me hope, right? Like it's something that is possible as we all speak up, as we all bring our friends to learn more about like how we can help out the environment, how we can use the Spirit to provide revelation, how we can do this best at wherever we are, right? Like Phil talked about how all the different chapters are working on different things, and that's something that I really love, right? I think we believe in I don't think I know. We believe in personal revelation, which is one of my favorite principles of the restored gospel, continuous personal revelation. I'm from Mexico City. The problems that Mexico City has are not the same problems as the problems that people in the Philippines have, right? Like we can't solve or environmental issues the same way. But luckily, we are all entitled to have the Spirit with us and ask for guidance, heavenly guidance. I believe heavily that God loves us and he loves the earth, and that's why we want to take care of the earth, because we love him, and he's willing to help us find those solutions. So slowly but surely, if we keep doing these things, we can share that message. We can have a world where every member of the church understands this vision, right? Understands that it's part of our duty and it's part of the restored gospel to do this. So that's what we want to do. We're doing everything we're doing, forums, book clubs, local chapters, so we can achieve this, right? It's a very ambitious vision, but I don't think it's impossible. It might take a long time, but all of us, including all of you on this call, are working towards this already. And that's our vision. But to accomplish our vision and our mission, we got a couple of values. Oh, wait, next, great. So we have 5 values, and we will keep rotating to talk about them. But in essence, is we want to teach, testify, unify, congregate, and celebrate. And I'm going to let Peter talk a little bit about our teaching value, and then we'll keep rotating as we go.
Anyway, teaching. We seek to increase public awareness and understanding of Earth stewardship as a sacred responsibility based on the doctrines, publications, teachings, and history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I could say a lot about this, but I think maybe one of the most heartening things is that I feel like we are at a moment when this message really resonates. It resonates with members of the church. The church is articulating the same, the presiding bishopric's office is articulating the same message. And I feel like all the gates are open to us. So I don't know how to say it other than that this is our moment. And we increase public awareness, not in if we try to go issue by issue, it gets a little bit messy. As Teresa was saying, maybe the specifics of Earth stewardship in Mexico City are different than the specifics of Earth stewardship in the Philippines. So if you try to get down into the weeds, it's hard to articulate one law or one policy that fits all situations. But the thing that does fit all situations is individuals relying on their own understanding and their own revelation to kind of steer them. So our job as an organization is to give people the information that they need in order to, coupled with their insights and intelligence and revelation, to make the right decisions to fit their situation.
Great. I just got Peter unmuting. I was thinking, Phil or Chloe, if you have anything to say during the vows, we can jump in and say things. I love what Peter just said about it's up to the individual, but I think the best part is like, as we understand the doctrine, all the specifics follow.
Yeah, and I think that there's a little bit of delineation. So some of these things were things that were put together in strategic plans as part of our value statements before, but there was a little bit of a discussion that we had between teach and testify, which is this next one, and the importance of the delineation and inclusion of both. And I love what was said there about teach, because we really believe in the idea of accretional knowledge here, right? We're building line upon line, precept upon precept. That the teaching part is a way that we're all being educated together about way that doctrine is manifested and lived out in different contexts. And so when we're saying teach, I think that the important part about that is that we are actually trying to create educational resources. So Chloe recently pushed out some fabulous curriculum of FHE lessons that are related to Earth stewardship, and one of them in particular was centered around Bishop Cossey's talk from last year's conference. I think it was the October conference, and we are continuing to do that. And we have some other members of LDSES who are developing more curricula around that. In fact, we have some that are in this Zoom room that are engaged in that, and I love that. So that's an important part. And then Testify, the way that I kind of see this or perceive this in the way of Testify is that we're providing a platform for people to actually just tell their stories. So in the Company of Stewards, I've always thought is a great one. It kind of does a little bit both. In this way is that, you know, people are teaching us and we're being educated, but we're also being able to hear people's testimonies and how those have been strengthened through their lives and the way they live them out. And another way that that we're really thinking about this is we want to increasingly provide more media content that is around telling stories. So this may include things like coming up with a podcast and or a thought leadership blog. In fact, we do have people who do blog posts. We just had Lisa Ayedo recently did a blog post about Incan civilization and what they could teach us about cultural landscapes and our relationship to the land. It was fabulous. I read it just the other day. And then one of the ways that I feel like it's really bridged in our resources is what is in our gospel resource library that we have. And that is one where it originally, I think, started. Peter, you could give more, I think, background on it, but I think it started as essentially like an indexing effort, basically. Like all the members of LDSES got together and said, let's scrounge every single scripture and statement by church leaders that we can around the environment or the earth and put it all together in a place where people can search it.
I think that's right. And the twist is more information keeps coming. General conference talks are one thing or another. So what was up to date a year ago is no longer up to date. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
And there's an ongoing effort to do that. It's we're actually still, because the website is refreshed and it's new, we're still plugging it back into the new website. So if you tried to use it recently, you may have noticed that the page is kind of broken. But that's because we're updating it, modernizing it to a really good searchable database. And like Peter said, one of the ways that we hope we can have ongoing involvement from people is to continually have a way of updating that and getting more data to put into it. And that's another. So the reason I mentioned that is that that's a way that you're both being able to teach through using that resource library, but also when I'm thinking of Testify, I know of people who have used it for talks. When they're going to give a talk or a lesson about our stewardship, they'll use that as a way. It's kind of a more pointed gospel database.
Yeah, and I love that. I think teaching and testifying go together because, you can like prepare a talk or a lesson, but I think the best teacher is a testimony, right? Like authenticity. When you bring all you know and all you believe into a class or a talk, that's when you can get to start changing people's perspectives and hopefully people's hearts, right? So you combine all the teaching, all the knowledge that you have acquired, and then you share it with people, and then you testify why you believe in that and how is that meaningful to you. Then that's when the real teaching happens. That's when the Spirit comes, and that's when we can really start spreading the word like a little bit more, maybe not faster, but I think it's like deeper, right? Like I think we've all had experiences when it wasn't really everything that someone said in their talk, but it was how authentic the conversation was that made you start maybe thinking about it or made you feel things. So I love that these two things are part of what we're trying to do. We're teaching, we're also testifying, because I think they go together. You can't really teach something that will stick to someone until you do it authentically and with the Spirit. our next value is to unify, right? And that's really tricky these days, right? Sadly, environmentalism has always been seen as something that's politically heavy, especially in the US. And our idea is to, or hope is to don't make exceptions, like to unify people of different races, even different religions, right? Like we believe that this is a Latter-day Saint community, but we invite everyone to come. We believe that we are all children of God, and we all live in like on this earth, and we all want to take care of it. So we don't really, or resource library is not just for people that are members of the church, or meetings are not just for people that are members of the church or local chapters. It's really for everyone that wants to take care of the earth and that wants to learn more about how this is related to the divine nature. So our idea is to unify people through the environment. We all live here, we share this. It's not about politics, it's not about religion or like any social class. It's more about just being together for this common cause and our common home.
I have a comment. I want to drill down a little bit on the political aspect, because as Teresa mentioned, we live in an age and largely in a place where there are political divisions where maybe in an ideal world there wouldn't be. And I often think of my brother-in-law, and I apologize every time I cite him. I feel like I should apologize to him. He's a great guy, but politically we come from very different places. And I feel like in the back of my mind, the mission of LDS Earth Stewardship is to speak to him, because speaking to me is easy, but that's the test, is whether I can speak to my brother-in-law. And this is a guy who would pride himself on being an earth steward, even though he's politically very different than me. So I feel like a measure of our organization is how well we can speak to people across the political spectrum.
Yeah, and it's kind of touching on that. I think that that's where there is a unique role that's being filled by LDS. There are other church-friendly or church-adjacent organizations that are involved in environmental activism and political movement, and they are filling in a really important niche in and of themselves. And here we try to be as aligned with, I guess you could say, the church body as possible, to where there's neutrality on partisanship. I guess you could say. There's not necessarily neutrality on important values in society, but there's neutrality on the way that those might be gone about or advocated for. And I think that the way that we're able to overcome that best in LDS is through congregating, because the best way that you can see your relationship and just actually how similar you are to people of different backgrounds is to be face to face, to be in a room with each other or in a place working on a common cause. And that's something that has been, I think, particularly strong within the work that LDS has done in recent years. I can cite a couple of examples where I thought it was great. So I just about right when I was taking over as board chair, I was briefed on what the Germany chapter had done. So they're a countrywide chapter. They actually meet mostly virtually because some of them are spread out all over the country. But what they did was they actually did have an in-person gathering with, I believe it was 3 major world faiths. I think they had representatives from the Jewish faith, from Islam, and maybe one other, I can't remember the other. And they all got together. Do you remember, Chloe?
Baha'i?
The Baha'i faith. That's right. Yes, the Baha'i. And they all got together in a room and talked to each other about what are their common goals as major world faiths, and how they should care for the earth together, and where are their partnerships and possibilities. There was a similar event that we had with some members of LDS that met with we call it the C3, the Creation Care Coalition, which is members of Mormon Women for Ethical Government and the Mormon Environmental Stewardship Alliance. And we met with a man named Martin Palmer, who is, he used to be a right-hand man of Prince Philip in some of his efforts around environmental movement. And he came and spoke to us, and we, with a friend of LDS and the C3 coalition, talked about trying to start a worldwide movement that resonated with the Anglican faith, is where his background was, and trying to get all faiths to come together and do fasting for the planet. It was a very interesting conversation. We've also been recently approached by, or we've have contacts within our board to the G20 Interfaith Summit, and they have expressed interest that we need to have LDS representation in that G20 summit, which is essentially the G20 countries, who are part of that block of countries, having an interfaith dialogue about important issues in the world, and poverty alleviation and hunger, and trying to be involved in world peace efforts, and environmental efforts are a big part of that. And they want LDS representation there, and LDS is perhaps going to be involved in those ways. So there's all sorts of ways we can engage, and a lot of that has to do with coming together and congregating, and putting us in the same place at the same time, doing the same important project of some sort.
Yeah, and another thing that I had a big role in, like, leading all the BOB students last year, and I love the congregate aspect of what we like to do. So we have great students at BYU, and you have freshmen and seniors and grad students, and there's a big group of students that really care about the environment and want to do something. But because sadly sometimes it feels like it's politically involved, and not everyone is like on board to talk openly about these things, some of those students feel kind of like lost or alienated, like they might not belong. But when we formed this group and started this campaign, they found a place, right? Like they found their wolf pack, and it was very nice to see them, right? Like it was very nice to see how they will be happy to see each other. We had a very nice kind of concluding meeting at the end of the semester where they bore their green testimonies, right? Like testimonies about Earth Stewardship. But like seeing the friendships that they developed, like it was just really nice for me to see that they could find a place where they felt like they belong and that they could do something. So I think there's power on getting together, and I was able to see it. So even if it's just people getting together to go on nature walks, even getting together virtually like we're doing right now, or like the book club that is just like we're all reading the same book, I think those are all ways to like gather some like power and momentum, putting people together. And I really like this part of LDS. And then our last one, but also my favorite, celebrate. Who wants to take on? Is it my turn? Can't remember.
Go for it.
I'm gonna go for it. So we believe in celebrating, right? Like we believe preserving Earth's integrity for future generations is an inclusive act, and thus honor the diverse ways Latter-day Saints, another of faith care for works creation. Sorry, I can't read when I'm like a little anxious. But we seek to support everyone regardless where they are and how they're trying to be wise stewards, right? And I think that's the best part, right? Like everything we're doing is worth being celebrated. We are doing the Lord's work, and we do it in small or big ways, right? Sometimes it's just a little Instagram post. Sometimes it's just an acknowledgement in our newsletter. Sometimes it's a bigger thing, like highlighting you in the company of stewards. But I think celebrating and acknowledging that this is beautiful work, but it's a little hard. It's powerful. Like we should be happy about what we're doing. We should celebrate the efforts. Most of us are doing this as volunteers, right? Like we do this because we love it. You come to these meetings because you care about the earth. You go to your local chapter because you want to. This is all volunteer work. A lot of people will not do it. So it's worth celebrating our successes. It's worth celebrating that we're getting together. We should be proud of what's happening.
Yeah, so I'll echo that and say that this was an important thing for us to explicitly express as a value, because something that we've seen in a lot of the general dialogue around environmental issues and earth issues, there's no buts about it. We've got some serious things that we need to address worldwide, right? That are having to do with the health of the earth and of our societies that depend on it. However, that does not mean to us that being involved and being a steward of the earth has to be always incredibly serious, sober, broad and far-reaching work. It needs to be fun. It needs to be engaging, and it needs to give you joy. And there needs to be hope in what you're doing. And so we wanted to be very clear about that. And we try to make that our modus operandi when we go about any of our LDSES activities. There are times when we are talking about very, very serious things, but there's others in which we're playfully being engaged in whatever it may be, whether it's a conversation and a nature walk, slinging mud at each other when you're planting trees. I don't know. Or something as simple as just people being with their kids growing a garden and seeing the great gifts that God gives us through the earth and providing food for us. It needs to be not always boring and not always crazy serious and sober.
Phil, when you talk about finding joy, for some reason I thought of the hymn "Come Ye Saints," and this idea that the road ahead is undeniably difficult. Don't rest assured it's difficult, but we're directed to find joy in it and approach it with hope and faith, rather than becoming mired in a sense of how big the task ahead of us is. So anyway, I like the hymn "Come Ye Saints."
Yeah, and just
Go ahead.
go. No. I was gonna keep going, but you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, so that's our mission, vision, and values. As far as just the refresh statements that we've put out there, and we've kind of hinted at some of the things that are going to be new that we want to introduce within there. They're sort of tacitly mentioned in passing, but I think that what we want to do maybe from here, is to talk a little bit about some of those new things that we might be wanting to do to better reflect this mission, vision, values, or get feedback from folks who are here on, what they see, ways that we can better reflect those. But I wasn't totally sure if that's where we're going next.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just gonna say, we're very grateful for all the support you give us. My next slide is just the board of directors, right? Everyone's volunteering, and we have a lot of help from our staff. I want to acknowledge Chloe, who does so much to keep this running, to keep the company of stewards running, to keep our social media running. She's really the mother of this organization, when it comes to getting things done in a timely manner. But this is us, right? We're all volunteers here, and we are grateful for all the support we get from you and all the exciting ideas that you have. We also, as I was telling you, we're growing. We're kind of everywhere right now, and it's very, very fun to see. So if you are on this call, or if you see us on YouTube later and you want something to do with us, we have a lot of ideas and a lot of projects, and I will get back to what we want to do with you and kind of get some feedback from you. But we have a lot of things that we could get help with. So if you are really dying to get your hands dirty, maybe literally, if you want to just reach out and email us, we'll put you to work. It's a lot of work. It's great work, very rewarding, but it's work. And I can testify that as I've been working on LDSES, and as I've been spending more time thinking about these things and studying about these things, my testimony of why I do this has grown. And my relationship with my Heavenly Father and Heavenly Parents has changed a little bit. And I have new perspectives in how I'm related to them and how we can get closer. So it's rewarding work in a lot of ways. So if you really want to get going and get something, if you want us to give you something to do, we can. So please reach out, or we will reach out to you and invite you to help us out. And with that said, let's just go to questions and feedback. And I might just let you feel kind of direct that.
Yeah. Chloe, do you have something to say?
Oh, no. I was just going to usually, if you want to type your questions in, I can read them out loud, or if you guys just want to say like talk yourself, that's fine too. So I'll be here as needed, but I'll mute myself unless needed.
Feedback is really, really valuable. So please dig for some feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want that, and if we didn't quite know whether people were going to have sincere questions about our mission, vision, and value statements per se. So what we were kind of thinking as a sort of complement to that is trying to suss out where those of you who have been involved with us, or as in whatever capacity, whether that's just attending or being part of a local chapter or having served in the organization in some other way before, or just giving monetary support, what sorts of things do you feel are ahead of us? What do we need to be involved in? And perhaps what questions do you have about current things that we are doing? And we've got ideas, and we want more. we want to get the very best ones to bubble to the top of things that we, from at least as a board, should be focusing on, because it's going to look real different from where everybody here is at, how they want to be engaged in our stewardship, and so we just love to hear from you about that.
So Raymond says, have we prepared any kind of unit that can be used in teaching the message at BYU schools? Or BYUX? I'm assuming you mean the various BYUs.
Yeah, well, I figured that was a shorthand. I don't know if anybody uses that, but
I like it.
Yeah, BYUX. Yeah.
I guess
I mean, I was I was let's see, listened in on a presentation about BYU Pathway and the tremendous progress that people are making in their education and getting jobs and so on through that program. And I would think that, that as well as the more conventional BYU campuses could incorporate some of these stewardship ideas into parts of the curriculum. And perhaps we could, help to develop an element like that would make that part of the sort of church-related education that they are making part of the curriculum. I know that they have, the standard kinds of like studying the Book of Mormon and so forth, but helping people relate church doctrine into all of the stuff that we hear these days about the environment, I think would be very worthwhile. And we could talk to the various BYU organizations to see if they could, put that message into parts of the curriculum.
Yeah, I have kind of good news for you, Raymond. So BYU Provo just approved the environmental studies minor. So now students can get credit to have a minor in environmental studies. And luckily too, a lot of people that are either on the board right now or were on the board before, having worked for BYU and are very involved in this. George Shanley, which is I could call him one of the funding fathers of LDS, I would say. He is the one in charge. He's the chair of this minor right now. And I'm sure we will have students. Well, part of the curriculum will be including this as part of, including the theology part as part of the studies, right? Brayman is saying that BYU supported. Brayman is the sustainability director of BYU. So yes, we are supported. There's a lot of faculty engagement when it comes to sustainability and earth stewardship. And I get to meet with those professors very, very, very often. And there's a lot of good ideas, good energy. It's moving. So yeah.
Yeah, and along the same line, perhaps a sort of a course outline that could be used at LDS institutes around the world, along the same line.
I can speak to BYU Idaho a little bit, and sorry, I have a noisy baby that in the background. I'm solo parenting while my husband's out of town, so he's here with me. But I'm adjunct for BYU Idaho, and there is an online class that they do offer called Environmental Stewardship. And it is for online students, so that includes matriculated pathway students. I don't know what else they offer, but that is there. And I also think BYU Hawaii is really kicking butt at doing environmental stuff, right? I keep hearing things. I don't know what they like offer as far as curriculum goes. But yeah, something an institute would be very cool. If anyone has, connections to anyone in CES, let us know.
Yeah. It just seems like there's when we're talking about so much of what we were reviewing tonight was about disseminating information to church members and helping them tie protection of the environment into our church curriculum and teachings and so forth. And so I'm sure that there are lots of things going on out there, but simply identifying where they are, like at BYU Provo, and helping people know what resources are out there, and then like drawing on those existing things that have been done and getting them disseminated through the rest of the church educational system, including the institutes. I think could be something that we might be able to support.
Yeah, I agree. With CES would be, I think, really fruitful place to create sorts of curriculum that are really bridging those things. Absolutely, and that's an effort that's maybe even worth formalizing in some way once we get the bandwidth there. And I know that Chloe, we've had some conversations kind of in passing about this, so that's great. I'm seeing something in the chat. So Lydia Theobald said that she was actually one of the people that indexed it, the resource library, along with another student at BYU. And she had to run, but she would love to help out with reorganization efforts. It was pretty complex to organize originally, and be great to try and make it more usable. So that is awesome. And bless your soul, Lydia, and your colleague for helping with that effort. And kind of along those lines, I want to know what people think of this. So I think those are good suggestions for what we do on the resources side. I've heard a lot of people basically say, I want to go and do something. I want to be with people, getting involved. What does it look like? And there's probably a lot of people that are not necessarily near a local chapter, or even if they are involved in a local chapter, the chapter itself maybe doesn't know quite exactly what they're doing. They're volunteers, so there's not a lot of bandwidth. So how do we get people engaged? And this thing that I can't get off my mind that I would love people's thoughts or reactions to is, I feel like there needs to be a just serve for the environment. So if you've ever seen the BYU Just Serve resource, it is essentially an indexed database where anybody can put their address in or where they're at in the country or perhaps the world now, and it spits out, here's like all of the local food banks or whatever things you can go be a part of. And I would love to see that here. And for us, because we are a distributed board and a distributed organization, and we ourselves are not always going to be the whole and sole sponsors of every necessarily project that's happening. And our biggest goal is for people to be engaged in their community. I almost feel like it would be great to be a convener via information dissemination. And so having that would be awesome. Donna, I see you have a raised hand.
Hi, my name is Deanna Price. I'm in Austin, Texas. And one of the things that I've been thinking about and have sent a note to somebody about is that Texas just passed, the governor just signed $1 billion initiative to upgrade all of our state parks, and it's going to the voters in a few weeks. I would love, since I'm going to be working around those people and I'm in the Sierra Club, I'd love to just have a one page that has who we are on a piece of paper that I can hand out to people. And when I saw this presentation tonight, whoever answered me, I said, I'd love to have this to make a presentation or have this recording and send it out to people, because the values are what we're getting across, and it makes us different from the Sierra Club or different from the political action committee that's behind. I mean, $1 billion is wonderful and I'm ecstatic, but the bottom line is that I'm willing to walk into some of these meetings with a piece of paper and say, this is what we stand for. I've worked with the Baha'is. I've been interfaith most of my life. And I'm a convert to the church. So anything that we can have, there's no local chapter. I have thought about it. I've talked to the few people that go on hikes that I know of, and nobody's responded much to me, but I'm still here and I'm still talking and I'm still showing up. So if there's anything that I can have that out of tonight, those 5 values would be perfect.
So like a printable sheet kind of?
Yeah, that's got who we are and what it's about. But what basically the first 10 or 20 slides was just beautiful. And I mean, when I first came on and Sister Eubank was doing all what she wonderfully does, which Peter referenced, I was in. I mean, I sat there and looked at everything and printed everything off, and I was ecstatic. So, I mean, that y'all have done the work. It's just thinking more about how to get it out there. And I'm willing to walk in with a one pager and go, here, this is what it's all about. Let's have a meeting.
I love it. I love that. Thank you, Deanna. And sorry for calling you Donna, Deanna.
That's okay. It's a wake-up call for everybody. Don't worry about it. I could put 3 spaces in there, and Anna is lady in Japanese, but that has nothing to do with the testimony about my name.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
And yes, we'll absolutely get something like that to you.
This is beautiful what y'all did tonight. This is beautiful, and I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy.
That makes us happy.
Yeah.
There were a couple of sessions of like thinking and rewriting, so this is good feedback.
And I think a printable sheet is something very feasible we could provide.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can do. Well, I think that one of our cut sheets from the annual report actually probably will.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
Do there. And we can just slap a QR code on there so that people can scan it and get to the website or something like that.
Well, I think the differentiation that y'all really marked out tonight about the values and the stewardship of creation, every time I get 15 texts a week from the Sierra Club. They're incredibly active here. And we've got some very heavy duty green investors here in Austin. And the bottom line is that they're all politically motivated. So they can't just go for a walk and talk. They've got to march and put out signs. And I've been with them often, and I'm worn out. So it's a very subtle, but it's a very substantial difference. And that's what I love about this group.
Yeah. Agreed.
Another thought that occurred to me is one of the things that we could do to sort of promote our mission would be to perhaps have a kind of annual award program to recognize outstanding work that's been done by various people.
An award. I like that.
yeah, could be, people in the various chapters or otherwise, and and name the awards after particular figures that represent the organization values, like Hugh Nibley. I mean, he was a guy who would go out and spend a summer at Crater Lake in Oregon, and had some confrontations with the cougar and bear and other stuff. And he was very much an environmentalist back before it was popular. So, I would nominate Hugh Nibley as being the namesake for an award.
I think the award idea is a great idea, and giving the award, we could have a big run up where we encourage people to nominate candidates.
Yeah.
And that'd be a great way to involve a lot of different people and would be exposed to a lot of good work that we're not currently aware of. And so the bestowing the award would be the culmination of a process. Maybe it takes a month or two. I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of that, I would love to hear, so just hearing some of you talk tonight about what's going on in your neck of the woods, we want to hear more about that. So anybody who is either here tonight or is watching on YouTube afterwards, if you know of any sort of thing that's happening, whether it's just, you and your family doing something interesting around the house that you feel, is living out these principles, or whether somebody is doing some amazing, global scale effort from where they're at and they're doing all sorts of organizing and anything in between, we would love to hear all of your stories. So please send it out. What's the email handle, Chloe?
Info at LDS Earth Stewardship.
Info at LDS Earth Stewardship.
Or messages on the social media that will do it too.
Or a message on social media. You can DM us, or any mean that you feel is easiest to get to us. We would love to hear your stories, particularly because one of the other things that we're hopefully going to be involved in not too long is ways of curating and broadcasting those stories, whether that is through blog posts or podcasts, possibly. Something along these lines. We want to create more content that elevates these stories. So we'd love to hear that.
I think Douglas has something to say.
Well, oh yeah, I saw you were unmuted, Douglas. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I was just gonna respond to what your question was about Just Serve, because I do have this concern about, or there appears to be, well, one of the focuses I think that we need to take on is, how do we drive this initiative down to the everyday individual that attends like church on Sunday? And that's not always the case. And I'm just wondering if LDS Just Serve might help in that case, if we have some champions who can get those kinds of projects onto Just Serve. It may help to involve the everyday individual, the everyday saint that attends church, as well as the chance to interact with other faiths and other people out there that have these same concerns. Like you mentioned, Philip, probably the most common kind of event that's on that website is like food kitchens or like those kinds of things. But close behind that are the environmental cleanups and other things like that. And that's a very easy thing for people to be involved in. So I just hope that there's a way that we can reinforce that a little bit with people to get those kinds of events on to Just Serve.
Yeah, absolutely. That's yeah, that's great. And I mean, that's a really good point too, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? If there's already something that works really well and could be effective, then perhaps it's something that we're just kind of a mouthpiece that's mediating that, and being able to just provide more opportunities there, and or direct our members to the existing ones that might already be there and perhaps in their area. I love that. That's a great point of feedback. I appreciate that. And it looks like that's certainly being reinforced by comments in the chat as well. It's great. I know that we're running up on time here, but if there's anything else that people wanted to bring up as a last word or something before we go, of course, if you think of something afterwards, we'd love to hear from you, and any ideas that you may have about how we can best put these mission, vision, and values into practice and into implementation. We'd love to hear it.
Oh, I used to work at the Idaho National Laboratory, which is, the offices are in Idaho Falls, so close to Rexburg. And there are a lot of the people that I worked with in the environmental field there are LDS. So they are a resource of professionals who are deeply versed in environmental issues with fish and wildlife and air and water pollution and radiation and hazardous materials. They work in that field, and they would be a resource that could be drawn on by church members in Eastern Idaho, as well as BYU Idaho and its students and faculty, to get the pot boiling in terms of communication and education and appreciation among the general church membership of environmental stewardship.
Fabulous.
We need to get an Idaho chapter going.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, Deanna, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to add, has anybody ever thought about doing a prayer initiative? As y'all may know, we've got some serious water problems. I think we all do. And I have been involved in prayer initiatives in the past. And I think that would be something that we could maybe consider as an interfaith initiative. And I'm just putting it out there because, first of all, we have a directive from President Nelson to expect miracles. Second of all, we need some. And so I'm just going to say, would y'all consider that? I've been going to some of the powwows, and I recently found out I'm a quarter Cherokee. And I was talking to some folks recently, and they said jokingly, well, we pray for rain and it happens. And I said, well, I want to introduce you to a few Sierra Club people. So, I mean, the thought's out there and it does work. And we have that ability to go to our Heavenly Father, Mother, and to know that we are being heard. So I'm just putting the idea out there. An environmental initiative. We got $1 billion passed in Texas, y'all. I was stunned and
Yeah.
elated. Okay, we still got to go to the voters, but I shared that with Soren last week. So I mean, something is bubbling, and I'm thankful for this evening. Thank you very much. It's
I call it
prayer.
I call it the green momentum. You know how President Nelson talks about spiritual momentum? I think this is momentum, and it's the green momentum.
Very, very. Thank
Miracles
you.
happen.
Thank you.
I will say one thing about prayer. I'm trying to remember Bishop Waddell's talk about Great Salt Lake at the Stegner Symposium, but he I think he reiterated the importance of prayer. I mean, his main message was the church is giving all this water to the Great Salt Lake. That's a physical thing, but he didn't back off at all the importance of prayer. And so I think there might be a good connection between what Deanna's proposing and
Yeah.
And that draws the interfaith people together even more. We have a very good network here. It's called IACT. And they're dovetailing a lot of the homeless work that's going on here in Austin. And I've been in touch with them again recently. So it's just percolating that green momentum. Thank you very much, Teresa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe Bishop Waddell spoke at University of Utah College of Law symposium on the Great Salt Lake. Yeah, just a few months ago.
Sent the press release about it.
Yes.
I think that that's a great idea, and it actually would be a great thing to merge into the proposal from, I guess it's been over a year now, of fasting for the planet, and perhaps that those things could be tooled into a sort of worldwide initiative of interfaith fasting and prayer together.
Fasting is very much the power of it all. And thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you all. This has been great. I love hearing from you, and please, we'd love to hear more from you afterwards too. And so info@ldsearthstewardship.org, or message us on social media, whether on Facebook or Instagram if you're following us on there. And of course, feel free to send an email to any of us if you want to. So I believe Peter and Teresa and I all have LDSES emails. So it would just be our first name at ldsearthstewardship.org. So for me, it'd be Phil@ldsearthstewardship.org, Teresa at ldsearthstewardship.org, or Peter at ldsearthstewardship.org. And we'd love to hear from you, and would love to put people to work on some great things. Please, we really appreciate hearing from you, and we hope to hear more from you all. So thanks for coming.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, y'all.